Our next guest will be Paul Spiegel. Paul is a lawyer. Well, Paul, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yes, thanks, Fabian. I'm Paul Spiegel. I'm an American attorney. I advise and consult with many longevity-related enterprises and also tech-related enterprises generally. I've been a member of the longevity community for at least a dozen years. It's difficult to know exactly when this all began. And I think I found my calling in life. This is a very important endeavor. I'm glad to be able to help out any way that I can.
So, Paul, what made you decide to invest into the anti-aging longevity field?
Well, I became a member of the field, a member of the community many years ago. At the time, there was nothing to invest in, really. It was a lot of scientists sitting around sharing ideas and saying crazy things like, I think we can solve the problem of human aging. And everybody said, well, you're fine, guys. But we didn't believe them. We weren't listening. We decided to move forward anyway. The first thing that I invested in longevity was my time, my talent, my skills as an advisor, and my attention to the community. And as companies began to seed angel investors, seed investors, I put a modest amount of money into a few of them. I'm far from the largest investor in the community, but I'm proud that I have, as they say in America, put my money where my mouth is, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Great. So, um, to be specific, what are some of your projects, your work that you're involved with?
But there's so many of them. I sit on the board of Life Extension Advocacy and International Longevity Alliance, Humanity Plus. Those things spin off all kinds of things. One of the more interesting projects that we're working on right now is a ballot initiative in the state of California to raise a bond measure of $12 billion to promote longevity research with the intention of achieving the goal that Aubrey Gray has set dozens of times, that with enough money, we will be able to study and ultimately defeat the aging process. Possibly these days, we're even talking very ambitiously about reversing the aging process, which I never would have believed possible 12 years ago. But it looks increasingly possible now.
Great. So, what do you think currently are the greatest challenges and difficulties that we're facing?
Well, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not really able to speak to that. However, the biggest challenge that we face is public perception. People still think that we're out of our minds, less so than they did some years ago. I think things like the Economist cover cheating death, the Time magazine cover about Google defeating death, the existence of Palico in itself, and the existence of many other companies funded by undeniably intelligent organizations that are now seeking to achieve the goal that the lunatics in our community set 20 years ago. I think that slowly people are beginning to realize that this isn't insane. However, when you take 100 people and ask them how long they'd like to live or whether they'd like to live to be 150, many of them will say, why would I want to live to be 150? And the problem is the perception of aging in the public is that when you age, you decline. What we're working on right now is to stop the decline, even reverse the decline, so that a person who lives to 70 can say, I feel great. And when they're 90, they can say, I still feel great. And when they're 120, they can say, I feel great, and so forth and so on. Right now, the public perception of an old person is somebody with dementia, somebody who is incontinent, somebody who has sarcopenia, somebody who basically can't take care of themselves, can't climb stairs, can't walk any distance, needs a wheelchair, can't remember their children's names. That is not what aging is. It's not what aging will be, and we can fix those problems.
So, where do you see great progress and contributions that have been made and hopes for the future? Um,
From a scientific standpoint, I think that senolytic research is probably the big one, and elimination of senescent cells has enormous potential. There are also some frontline treatments that everybody can take advantage of right away. Metformin is a good one. There's a study that's going on for metformin right now, the TAME study, um, which I think will bring metformin to the public perception in a way that it has not been before. Now, metformin exists in the public's mind as a diabetes drug. And nobody's scared of it. Nobody thinks it's strange. Nearly everybody in the United States knows somebody who is either taking metformin or has been recommended to take metformin. So suggesting that it might have effects on their healthy lifespan is not too far a reach. I think that's probably a very significant development because it means that something may be approved fairly soon by the FDA that everybody is already familiar with. It isn't very expensive and that can be used to increase the health of human lifespan. Most people who are not familiar with the science, who are not familiar with the field, ask lots of people, what can I take right now to help me live longer? And that's really about the extent of their desire, if not their interest. So the metformin study is a very significant one. I think another thing that's coming slowly is that governments, large government organizations are beginning to understand that aging is a disease. In fact, it is the precursor of so many diseases that once we acknowledge that it's a disease, we can cure it, or at least try to cure it. For the moment, the big public perception is that aging is inevitable. And that's just the way it is. You're 70 years old, it's a downhill slide from there. You're going to age, decline, and die, and you'll probably die in misery because nobody wants to get that old. If we can change that perception, everything will change.
Great, very great. So from a lawyer's point of view, what do you think the government could contribute to the cause?
The obvious thing would be money. Another thing would be an open research environment that allows for things to be done and things to be tried without kind of heavy oversight perhaps exists for cancer treatment or something like that. When you say the government, I think it depends on which government. What we are seeing right now, increasingly, is that different governments are taking a different position on this. The United States of America is no longer the only place where this research is being done. I don't think it ever was, but it's no longer the primary place where research is being done. Research is being pursued in smaller countries, in micronations such as the Republic of San Marino, or the Bahamas, or Singapore, places that are more flexible and less skeptical, shall we say, than the United States or even the European Union. And I think that's going to create great promise.
Interesting. Do you think we could come towards a great global cooperation in terms of the aging process, as in the nations working together collectively to fix aging?
I think so. I mean, there are very few universal truths in the world. There are very few things that happen to everybody. But as the old saying goes, everybody dies. Everybody gets old and dies. Everybody, most people at least, get sick and old before they die. Usually they get old and they get sick and then they die. And it happens to everyone. So the world can agree on this. Getting sick, getting old, and dying are not good things. I can't imagine anyone who's, yes, I think death is wonderful. And by the way, I'd like to be miserable before I go. That doesn't work. So I think that's the way that the world can work together on this. We may disagree on politics. We may disagree on boundaries. We may disagree on water resources or even on the need to save the planet, the effects of climate change. But nobody wants to get old, get sick, and die in misery.
Since you say it's affecting everyone, what is something that every one of us could do to help and contribute to this cause?
Simplest thing you can do is talk to everybody you know, explain to them what's going on, explain to them the promise of what we're doing. That is the big thing. Right now, nobody's got the magic bullet. Well, rapamycin, maybe metformin, maybe senolytic drugs, maybe who knows. Nobody's got the magic bullet. We are all on the same team, yet to score the big goal. But as long as everybody understands they're on the same team, as long as everybody understands that they have their part, even if it's as simple as just believing that the team will win, we can make things happen.
We will. So, in terms of numbers, how much roughly estimated do you think we would have to invest in order to see significant improvement for age-related diseases?
You know, that's a very difficult question. The problem with scientific research is that when you solve one problem, you identify two or three others, and then you have to go solve those. I'm at work on the California Ballot Initiative right now. We're looking at $12 billion, which is a lot of money. It's the price of a high-speed rail system, to give you an idea. And it's been hard enough for us to achieve in California. Whether or not the voters will accept another $12 billion in bonds to create longevity research and treatment centers, I don't know. I think they'll be wise enough to do that. I hope they'll be wise enough to do that. But ultimately, I don't think that there will ever be an end to the problem of aging and the need for funds in aging research. Somebody will get sick from something else. Maybe if you live to be 180 years old, your eyes don't work properly or your corneas just can't handle it. Then you need cataracts, okay. Maybe in 300 years, instead of replacing biological eyes, we'll replace the eye with a bionic eye. I think that there are outside limits to some body systems, but that's not beyond the realm of possibility that we can replace them with biomechanical systems or bionic systems. The cochlear implant or the artificial hip joint are two good examples of those, where rather than regenerating our own parts, we create new ones that work sometimes better than the old ones.
Yeah.
Technology advances, and somebody observed to me the other day, why are you doing this as just for rich people? They're the only ones that will be able to afford this. I remember when the rich were the only people who could afford a cell phone.
Yeah.
Now everybody has a cell phone. I saw a lovely statistic a while ago. More people on earth have access to a cell phone than have access to a toilet. Yes. And as Ray Kurzweil observed, the wealthy always get the best technology first, usually before it's perfected. But that doesn't mean that that's the only use of that technology. As technology becomes more refined, as it becomes more ubiquitous, the price comes down until you have people now in the mountains in Vietnam who use cell phones because the government doesn't see that there's any value putting wires through the mountains when they can just put transmission towers every few hundred meters or something and achieve the same result with no wires whatsoever. This technology has filtered down to the most basic levels of society. And essentially, the ability to communicate with the world anywhere, anytime, is taken for granted, whereas it was once pre-significant.
So, where do you think we will stand in 20 years from now in terms of aging research and the condition of people suffering from age-related diseases?
I think we will have solved some of them. I think that the pace of research is increasing. The amount of funds for research is increasing. And as with any other scientific endeavor, when knowledge accumulates, the speed of discovery and the speed of accomplishment tends to increase. Between, say, Leonardo da Vinci and Orville and Wilbur Wright, people spent hundreds of years trying to make a flying machine. Within 20 years after the Wright brothers started to fly, well, this is after World War I, you know what they did with airplanes in that war. Okay, within 20 years, the airplane was everywhere. We were still finding out what its uses were. Within 60 years, you're on our way to the moon. So once you start to apply science, once you start to develop the foundations, things build on those foundations. I think that in 20 years, many of the diseases that we presently fear, cancer, heart disease, the biggest killers, will be addressed, and if not solved, they will at least be kept under control. There are cancer therapies out there right now that didn't exist 5 years ago, and others that are in the works that may make those look primitive. I think if you were to come down with cancer today, your goal would be to live for 5 years. And at the end of that 5 years, the chances being incredibly higher that you would survive for another 5 years and another 5 years. And someday we will figure out a way to eliminate cancer entirely. It may take 20 years, it may take 50, but we're already trying to create a situation where we know what to do and we apply what we need. Another thing, of course, is CRISPR-Cas9.
Yeah.
That is one of the most remarkable things in the market. I remember being at a SENS conference in, I think, 2013 or 2014, where George Church gave a keynote speech, and he mentioned with this brand new technology that nobody had heard of. And we're like, oh, I have to remember what that's going to be. 20 or 30 years, it's going to be doing incredible things. But guess what? It's been 5 or 6 years, and it's doing incredible things. Nobody, I think, could have foreseen how quickly this work will change the environment for science in this field.
Yes. Yeah. So, lastly, do you have any statement or message that you want to give to the public?
Yes. Look at what we're doing. Think about what we're doing and support what we're doing. Tell your friends, tell them you understand that this is not just some crazy thought of a bunch of rich people, but that it's actually going to change the world for the benefit of all humanity. And then at whatever level you can, find an organization, whether it's SENS or LEAF or the International Longevity Alliance, any similar organization, and send them some money. It's amazing what small donations can do to add up to a serious sum that can be used for serious research. And the serious research is what's going to change it. That's what's going to allow us to defeat aging and hopefully reverse it.
Thank you very much, Paul.
My pleasure.